In the year 2360, a colossal shift in human consciousness occurred. We learned we were not as special as we thought. Life did exist elsewhere, and it came as a shock when that life crashed into us. In the summer of that year, an envoy of 5 ships appeared in our skies. We were afraid, and so before even learning their purpose, we unleashed our human hell upon them. The first ever United Council convened. It consisted of 1 representative from each of the 5 regions of the world: Australasia, the Americas, Europe, Eurasia, and Africa. The Council was tasked with confronting the threat from outer space. They created the USC, or the United Space Corps, a combined Earth-wide military force specifically trained to combat extraterrestrial threats to the planet. For the first time in history, humanity was united. This union, while a step forward for mankind, was marred by the same thirst for violence that had pitted humanity against itself for millennia. The only difference now was that we knew of and despised beings other than our own kind. In that first strike against the 5 ships hovering in our atmosphere, 1 alien ship crashed to the ground, destroying almost all of Edmonton, Canada. Unsurprisingly, the invaders retaliated. It was true that they were smaller in number, but they proved fierce and skilled opponents. Despite human military forces outnumbering them some 20 to 1, the invaders captured and defended a large swath of territory stretching from the eastern edge of British Columbia to the Quebec border. The 4 remaining ships touched down at evenly spaced distances across this territory. They did not continue their campaign against us. Rather, they dug in to defend the newly won lands. Humanity assailed them from air, land, and sea, but their defenses could not be breached. The losses were unimaginable. The war ended in a stalemate. As part of the ceasefire agreement, the lands the invaders had already won remained in their control. No further demands were made on the part of the invaders. The Canadians living in those territories were removed. Many went to live in other parts of Canada, but a large number of Canadians were displaced into the United States of America, living in large refugee camps in Detroit and New Jersey. This evacuation became known as the Canadian Diaspora. Human-controlled areas were fenced off, protected by heavily armed turrets placed at regular intervals. Almost every human religion took up the cause, calling the invaders demon. The name stuck. Though a ceasefire had been declared, so much anger and hate existed that we hovered in limbo, ever ready to take up arms again. Life, even some 40 years after the war, was tense. Humanity, devastated and constantly under threat, lived under a never-ending martial state, controlled entirely by the United Council. Food was heavily rationed, hunger and crime were rampant. The alternative was worse. Beyond the fences along the borders of British Columbia lived the demon. Past this divide, all that could be seen were the empty streets of what used to be a thriving city, except at night when the diseased came out. They shuffled along, made mindless and savage by the effects of radiation poisoning caused by the continual failures of our aging nuclear power plants and the shocking fallout of the weapons used against the demon. Those who were ill and could not afford anything but the poorly maintained and desperately overburdened state healthcare were often cast out by their caretakers, who could not afford to keep them while they waited for attention of medical staff. They were left to die slowly beyond the fence, creating a buffer of disease between humanity and the demon. Of the demon inhabitants, we knew almost nothing. In keeping with the ceasefire agreement, they were rarely seen near the turreted fences. The empty desolation between their settlements and ours housed only death. Every so often, one of the ill-shuffling husks that was once a human attempted to storm the fence, giving hints as to their growing intelligence. Life was difficult, but as life does, it endured. Introduction, Renegade, the formation of the First Intergalactic Alliance, Admiral Scott Pierce, ASC, Pennywhistle Publishing, 2452.